In the days when the sun still shone upon the Red Keep's gilded spires, when the shadow of war had yet to devour all that was golden and proud, two queens circled each other like lionesses in a cage. Cersei Lannister, first of her name, widow of Robert Baratheon, Queen Regent of the Seven Kingdoms, wore her bitterness as regally as her velvet. Across the stone, Margaery Tyrell, young, graceful, possessed of a smile as sharp as her wit, walked with the lightness of someone born for thrones. Their rivalry had set the capital abuzz for years. The Tyrell Rose and the Lannister Lion, entwined by marriage, rent by ambition, prowled each corridor of the Red Keep, measuring every glance, every word. The court watched and whispered, praying none would be caught between their claws. But on an afternoon when the city baked beneath a punishing sun, when the bells echoed the news of yet another smallfolk riot, a crack appeared in the prison of pride that bound them. Cersei stood alone in the solar, eyes on the cityscape below. Wine untouched. The weight of crown and kingdom pressed upon her brow. Tommen was gone, Myrcella dead, Joffrey, her golden boy, rotting in his marble crypt. Her uncle Kevin lay cold, another casualty of her desperate gambits. In the hush of that hour, the silence pressed too close, threatening to swallow her whole. A flutter of skirts and the scent of roses. Margaery entered, as if summoned by the very force of Cersei's longing for vengeance and rescue in equal measure. She wore mourning, though her cheeks were aglow with youth. She smiled that gentle smile, but her eyes, Cersei noted, were unyielding steel. "My queen?" Margaery said softly, her voice low enough not to carry beyond the threshold. "Might I sit?" Cersei's tongue ached to lash, to wound, but exhaustion held her. "You're braver than most to approach me, Lady Margaery. The city's on the edge of riot, and your family's banners are half-packed for flight." Margaery sat, smoothing her skirts. "The city's always on the edge of something. But I think you didn't poison Tommen, and I think you'd see the city saved before you'd see it burned, whatever the whispers say." "Damsel." Cersei felt the sting of accusation nonetheless, for the truth and the lie had always worn the same mask in King's Landing. "You know much for a girl of 19. Margaery's gaze held hers. "I know you're alone, and I know I am too. Loras is locked in a dungeon, my father a hostage to the winds. We are both cornered, your grace, and a lion is most dangerous when wounded." Cersei studied her. This was no girlish plea. She saw it in the subtle tremor of Margaery's hand, in the way her smile had faded. The city seethed. The faith militant, emboldened by High Sparrow and commoners alike, was rising. The Tyrell's power was waning, gold withering in the reach as war consumed the land. The Lannisters, her own house, pulled out from 1,000 cuts. And amidst it all, they, queens both, had been played by old men. Fanatics. Fools. "You came here for more than pity, I think," Cersei said, letting the bitterness pass her lips like wine gone sour. "What is it you want?" Margaery leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspirator's murmur. "We both want to rule. You for your children, for your house. I, for my family, yes, but also for myself. What if, instead of gnawing each other's bones, we shared the feast?" Cersei's laugh was sharp, not quite a bark. "You'd trust a Lannister?" Margaery's eyes glittered. "If the lioness is as caged as I am, yes. I trust need, your grace. I trust desperation." For a heartbeat, the room was silent, the city's chaos held at bay. Cersei tasted the shape of the idea. An alliance of queens, not through marriage or forced fealty, but through shared purpose. She saw the path open before her. If the Tyrells marched from the city, the Lannisters were finished. If the faith seized control, both their fates were sealed. Alone they would be torn apart. But together, "You would have me as your ally," Cersei said slowly. "Against the faith? Against my uncle's ghosts? Against your own kin if it comes to it?" Margaery nodded. "Against anyone who would take from us what we have earned. I know you, Cersei. I've watched you hold this city in the palm of your hand. Teach me. Use me. Let us become what they fear. Two queens united." "Them?" Cersei held her gaze for a long moment. She saw her own reflection, distorted but familiar, in the young woman before her. Ambition burning, loneliness biting, pride untamed. With a slow, measured breath, she nodded. Then let us begin. The sun dipped behind the city walls as they conspired, words falling like daggers and secrets. The first true alliance forged not by love or duty, but by the crucible of necessity. The days that followed moved swiftly, as though the very air had caught the scent of change. The first step was secrecy. No courtier, no handmaid, no eunuch must know that Queen Cersei and Queen Margaery were anything but rivals. They played their parts to perfection. Venomous glances in the throne room, icy words at council, each insult a cloak for whispered schemes beneath the surface. At night, in the Queen's tower, they plotted. Margaery brought word from the Reach. Her grandmother Olenna, sharp-tongued and iron-willed, held high garden by a thread. The Faith militants' agents roamed the countryside, burning septs and terrorizing lords, leaving chaos in their wake. The Lannister gold that had once paved the streets now flowed only in rivulets, smuggled out in the dead of night to bribe allies and silence dissent. It was Margaery who suggested the first move. The High Sparrow believes us weak. That is his mistake. He is a man, and men crave power as surely as any lord. He must be offered something he cannot refuse, and shown the cost of refusing us. Cersei considered. What would you offer? His life, perhaps? His cause? And I will. No, Margaery said, a wicked smile playing at her lips. His legacy. The Faith craves martyrs, stories. Let us give him stories. Let us play the pious wives, the meek and mild. And when he is lulled, when his flock is fat and sated, we strike. So they did. The women's court, long a source of rumor and intrigue, became their staging ground. Margaery, once so bold, now donned humility like a shroud, praying with the poorest, feeding orphans, winning the hearts of the Faith's flock. Cersei retreated from the public eye, claiming sorrow and penitence, emerging only for counsel, her face pale and drawn. The city whispered that the Lannister lioness was broken, that Margaery's roses bloomed with the Faith's blessing. But each gesture was a calculated move, each kindness a step toward the trap. The first blow came swift and silent. Sir Meryn Trant, one of the last of the King's Guard loyal to Cersei, slipped through the back corridors to deliver a message to the Gold Cloaks. The City Watch, weary of the Faith's ever-expanding reach, was ripe for sedition. Coin changed hands, promises were made. The Lannister lions would restore order, the Tyrells would feed the hungry. The Gold Cloaks, always loyal to the coin, listened. Next, Margaery sent a letter by trusted hand to Lady Olenna in Highgarden. A letter full of coded praise and concern. The Queen of Thorns, clever as always, understood. Within the fortnight, a caravan arrived. Food, gold, and a cadre of Reach Knights, all hidden within barrels and bales. The Tyrell banners did not fly, but their presence in the city grew, silent, dangerous, ready. And still, the High Sparrow watched. He summoned Cersei, demanded confession. She knelt, lips moving in practiced sorrow, eyes burning with hate. Margaery was brought to the great Septi, paraded as the Faith Star. Her humility praised from the pulpit. But as the days bled together, the court began to see through the veil. The Queen's tower was not as silent as it seemed. Small folk noted that the lions and roses no longer snarled at each other. The Red Keep's kitchens ran smoothly, the guards stood taller, and rumors of rebellion faded. It was then that the Faith struck. At dawn, the bells rang, summoning the city to prayer. The High Sparrow, robed in simple linen, stood atop the steps, flanked by sparrows and the armored Faith militant. He called for the queens to kneel, to confess, to yield all their power to the Faith. The crowd pressed close, eager for spectacle. But Margaery's voice rang out, clear and unwavering. We are not your captives, nor your enemies. We are your queens. The gods are merciful, but the realm is not ruled by prayer alone. Cersei, rising beside her, let her voice boom across the square. The Faith has grown fat on the city's misery. Today, that ends. Men are wand. The gold cloaks surged forward, blades drawn. The Reach Knights, disguised until now, tore off their cloaks, revealing gleaming armor. The crowd screamed and scattered. The Faith militant fought, but they were outnumbered, outmaneuvered. Blood stained the stones. The High Sparrow fell, not to a blade, but to the boot of the mob he had once stirred to frenzy, trampled as he fled. By dusk, the Faith was broken. Its leaders scattered, its zealots hanged from the city walls as a warning. The Seven's banners were torn down, replaced by the crimson and gold of House Lannister and the green and gold of Tyrell. The city, shaken, looked for new masters. The alliance was not without price. The small folk, ever fickle, blamed the queens for the bloodshed. But food returned to the markets, order to the streets. The gold cloaks patrolled with discipline, their loyalty bought and paid. Lords and ladies, seeing which way the wind blew, bent knee to the new order. Cersei and Margaery ruled side by side, two queens for the first time in memory. The small council, once a den of vipers, was emptied and refilled. Randyll Tarly named Hand, a Tyrell loyalist. Qyburn retained for whispers and secrets. Olenna herself summoned from Highgarden as advisor. The lords of the Reach and Westerlands filled the rest, their enmity carefully balanced by the will of their queens. In public, the alliance was a marvel. Cersei and Margaery attended court together, judged disputes, rode through the city with retinues of Lannister and Tyrell knights. They spoke with one voice, decreed new laws. Bread for the poor, taxes on the rich. A rebuilding of the city's ruined septs, but only under the crown's supervision. The Faith, cowed, retreated to prayer and penitence. Behind closed doors, the alliance was a dance of knives. Trust, once given, was hard to maintain. Each queen had her spies, her secrets. Margaery pressed for Lorasa release. Cersei demanded proof of Tyrell loyalty. Each compromise was a battlefield, but neither yielded, and in the crucible of necessity, respect grew. A year passed, and peace, such as it was, returned to King's Landing. The harvest was good. The banners of the Lion and Rose hung together over the gates, but war still simmered beyond the Blackwater. The Martells in Dorne, bitter over Oberyn's death, the Starks in the north whispering of vengeance, the Targaryen girl Daenerys across the sea with her dragons. The alliance endured, not for love or friendship, but for power and survival. And in that endurance, something new was forged. A kingdom perhaps, more just than any that came before. Or perhaps only a pause before the storm. But for now, two queens ruled in the Red Keep, their hands steady on the reins of fate, their eyes on the horizon, watching for the next game, the next enemy, the next turn of the wheel. For in the end, in Westeros, all things end in fire and blood. But for a time, there was order, and the city dared to hope. Come, D. Winter's breath was never far from the city, even in the velvet nights of late summer, when scented breezes drifted up from the Blackwater, and lanterns glimmered in the windows of the Red Keep. The realm had taken its first trembling steps into an uncertain new age, an age of two queens, circled by lions and roses. But in the hidden places, old grudges and new ambitions stirred restlessly, never content to sleep while the sun still rose over King's Landing. On the ramparts above Maegor's Holdfast, Margaery Tyrell leaned out over the stone, gazing across the sea of rooftops and distant lights. She was no longer the innocent bride who had curtsied to kings and smiled through poison. The city, and the woman she had chosen as her unlikely sister, had changed her. She carried herself taller now, chin high, her eyes keen and cautious. The people adored her as they ever had, but Margaery no longer let adoration soften her resolve. She was learning what it meant to rule in a city where every secret might be the blade that cut her throat. Footsteps behind her. Margaery did not turn, but she heard the rustle of brocade, the precise click of slippers on stone. Cersei emerged into the moonlight, a shadow rendered golden by her hair, carrying a goblet of red wine in a steady hand. "Trouble sleeping?" Cersei asked. her voice gentler than the words she'd once flung at the Tyrell girl. "I rarely sleep easily these days," Margaery replied. "Even roses have thorns, and thorns must be kept sharp." A flicker of amusement crossed Cersei's face. She extended the goblet. Margaery took it, feeling the heat of the wine through the polished metal. "Word from the north," Cersei said, looking out over the black water below. "The Stark boy has broken his bannerman siege at Winterfell. Roose Bolton's throat was slit by his own bastard. The north is rising." "Nenderwander." Margaery sipped the wine, letting the taste linger on her tongue. "And Daenerys Targaryen, still across the sea. Still collecting sellswords and slaves. Still promising fire and blood." Cersei's lips twisted into a wry smile. "I almost admire her tenacity." "3 dragons," Margaery murmured. "And a name half the realm will rally to if she lands with an army." Cersei shot her a sharp look. Would the Tyrells bend the knee to a dragon queen if the wind changed? The old Margaery would have dissembled, but she answered plainly, "Not while I sit beside you. My family is not so foolish as to abandon what we have for promises." She. Cersei accepted that. For now. "And yet, we are surrounded by traitors, and the realm is not so easily tamed. The faith has been driven back, but not destroyed. The common folk grumble, even as they eat Tyrell bread and drink Lannister wine. Bread and wine buy only patience, not loyalty," Margaery said, the Tyrell canoness in her blood coming forth. "To keep them, we must be seen. Together. There must be a royal progress to remind the lords of the Reach, the Crownlands, and the Riverlands who holds the throne." Cersei considered this, turning the idea in her mind. She, who had once considered such shows beneath her dignity, saw now the wisdom in Margaery's thinking. The war had left scars, burnt fields, shattered villages, hearts swollen with rebellion. If they did not reach out to the lords would reach out to someone else. "Very well," Cersei said. "You shall ride beside me, and the banners of Lion and Rose shall fly from every tower between here and Harrenhal." Margaery nodded, meeting the queen's gaze without flinching. In that moment, Cersei felt something pass between them, a silent contract, dangerous but necessary. They were bound now, by the fate of the realm as much as by ambition. The next morning, the royal progress was declared. Messengers rode forth in every direction, to Old Town, to Maidenpool, to the towers of House Frey and the garrisons of the Blackfish at River Run. The city bustled with preparation. Tailors and smiths worked through the night. New carriages were gilded, and the finest Tyrell silks arrived from the Reach. Gold cloaks shined their armor, and Reach knights drilled with quiet discipline. Even the courtiers, long practiced in the art of subterfuge, dared to hope that this new order might hold. On the day of departure, the 2 queens stood side by side on the steps of the Red Keep. The city's people, ragged, hungry, but eager, filled the square. Sir Jaime Lannister, arm encased in golden steel, led the escort, his face cool and remote. Behind him rode Randyll Tarly, Lord of Horn Hill, a severe man whose loyalty to Margaery was not quite as strong as his loyalty to order. Qyburn, soft-spoken and dangerous, brought up the rear with a company of his whisperers. The royal progress snaked out of the city gates, a river of color and steel. At every village, the people gathered, some shouting their loyalty, others staring with wary eyes. Cersei watched them all with a predator's attention, while Margaery knelt to speak with children, distributed bread and coins, and listened to the grievances of the people. The further they traveled, the more cracks they found. Fields burned in the war had not all recovered. Lords nursed old wounds and whispered of old enemies. The Riverlands, still haunted by the Red Wedding and the fall of House Stark, bristled with hidden rage. At Maidenpool, a mob of smallfolk blocked the road, demanding justice for a butcher hanged by the faith in the time of chaos. Cersei's first instinct was to have them whipped, but Margaery intervened, stepping down from her litter to speak with the ringleader. Her calm, her grace, her willingness to listen turned riot to celebration. The crowd, seeing both queens united, cheered instead of jeered. "Your way works," Cersei admitted that evening, though the words tasted strange. "It is not my way alone," Margaery replied. "It is what the realm needs. Fear and steel can only go so far." That night, in the tent they shared at the edge of the woods, Cersei dreamed of wildfire, of green flames and the cries of children. She woke before dawn, sweat slicking her skin, to find Margaery sitting upright, her hands folded in her lap. "We must send for Loras," Margaery said quietly. "The people know he lives, but they see him neither punished nor freed. The city whispers that you hold him as a hostage against me." Cersei considered this, rubbing her temples. "He murdered a man on the steps of the Sept. The faith may be broken, but the memory of their dead lingers. Then let him kneel. Let him confess in public. Let him bend the knee to you before the city and swear fealty. If you show mercy, the people will see your strength. If I plead for him, they will see your justice." Cersei's pride warred with pragmatism, but she saw the sense in Margaery's scheme. The next raven flew to King's Landing, and Loras Tyrell was brought forth from his cell, gaunt and trembling but alive. He knelt before the assembled court, head bowed, and swore himself to the Queen's peace. His sword was returned. He became their symbol, a knight broken and remade, living proof that the old enmities could be healed by royal will. The progress continued to Harrenhal, whose burnt towers loomed black against the sky. There, in the shadow of the ruin, the lords of the Riverlands assembled. Edmure Tully, thin and worn by captivity, bent the knee once more, swearing loyalty to the queens. Walder Frey, ancient and malicious, sent his sons in his stead, sly-eyed and cunning, their vows as slippery as eels. Cersei and Margaery stood together in the great hall, receiving oaths and gifts, making promises and threats with equal grace. At night, they plotted, weighing every lord's words, every offer of gold or swords, every hint of treason. Margaery, with her soft words and smiling eyes, won over the lesser lords. Cersei, fierce and unbending, cowed those who doubted. But the court was never safe from poison. In the 5th week of their progress, word reached them of ships sighted off the coast of Dorne. Black sails, foreign banners. Daenerys Targaryen had made her move at last. A council was called at once. Jaime Lannister, grim-faced, brought news from his scouts. The Dragon Queen had landed at Sunspear, with her Unsullied and Dothraki and 3 dragons wheeling overhead. The Martells, vengeful as ever, had thrown open their gates. "She marches north," Jaime said, voice hard. "With her at their head, the Dornishmen will sweep up from the south. We are trapped between fire and ice." "Then how?" Cersei's knuckles whitened around her goblet. "We must return to King's Landing. Every day we linger, we risk losing the city." Margaery's mind was already moving, calculating. "We cannot win a war against dragons in the field. But the city, King's Landing, is a fortress, and the people will fight for us if we win them first. And if Daenerys offers them bread and freedom and justice?" Jaime asked bitterly. "Then we must offer more," Margaery replied, with the stubborn hope of a queen who has known both defeat and triumph. "We must become what they hope for, not what they fear." Cersei turned to her, recognizing the burning will in Margaery's face. "Then we must act as one. No secrets, no second games. If we are to survive, it will not be by gold or lies alone, but by faith in each other." For the first time, Margaery believed her. She nodded, and the pact was sealed, not in blood, but in shared necessity. The return to King's Landing was a feverish rush, the roads thick with refugees and rumors. As they passed through the gates, the city felt changed. The people cheered, but there was a wildness in their eyes, a hunger for hope, for rescue from the darkness that pressed in from every side. Within the Red Keep, the small council assembled. Olenna Tyrell herself arrived, whisked up from Highgarden in a covered litter, her tongue sharp as ever. My granddaughter tells me you have not yet blown us all to hell with wildfire, Cersei, she remarked with acid wit. Shall we take that as progress? Cersei smiled thinly. The realm does not need fire. It needs order. Olenna raised a skeptical brow, but said nothing more. The city's defenses were reinforced. The gold cloaks drilled day and night. The city's granaries were stocked with food from the Reach. The harbor bristled with new scorpions and ballistae. Qyburn's little birds spread through the alleys, gathering whispers of dissent and treason. But Daenerys moved swiftly. Within weeks, her banners flew above Storm's End, and her dragons darkened the skies above the King's Road. Lords declared for her, seeking to avoid the wrath of fire. The North, under Jon Snow, remained aloof, but their silence was ominous. The day came when the bells of the Great Sept tolled, not for prayer, but for warning. From the battlements, Cersei and Margaery watched as black sails clustered at the mouth of the Blackwater. Above them, 3 shadows circled, vast, winged, and terrible. The people will not fight dragons, Jaime said bluntly, his eyes fixed on the horizon. No one will. Then we must win them before the city falls, Margaery replied. Let us call the people to the dragon pit. Let us speak to them. Not from behind walls, but face to face. Da. Cersei's first instinct was to scoff, but she remembered Margaery's words. Hope, not fear. She nodded, and the message went out. In the wide, ruined bowl of the dragon pit, the people assembled. Tens of thousands. Small folk and nobles, knights and merchants, beggars and washerwomen. All came to hear what their queens would say. The morning sun was blinding on the broken stones. Cersei stood forth, her golden hair unbound, her eyes fierce. She spoke first of the city's pain, the wars, the famine, the rule of zealots and usurpers. She did not hide her own guilt, nor plead for forgiveness, but spoke instead of her love for the city, her vow to defend it with her life. Then Margaery stepped forward, and her voice rang clear across the ruins. She spoke of hope, of peace, of a future where the realm might be whole once more. She called for unity, not just for the queens, but for all the people. To stand together, not for Lannister or Tyrell, but for King's Landing itself. When they finished, the crowd was silent. For a moment, it seemed as if the city held its breath. Then, slowly at first, the cheers rose, growing louder, until they echoed from every shattered arch and stone. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. That night, as the dragons circled above the city, their fire lighting the clouds, Cersei and Margaery stood together on the balcony of Maegor's Holdfast. If we fall, Cersei said quietly, let it be as queens, not as enemies. Margaery nodded, feeling the weight of destiny settle upon her. As queens, and perhaps, if the gods are kind, as friends. Then, in the dark, the city glittered, fragile and beautiful. A jewel balanced on the knife edge of fate. Its hope kindled not by fire or steel, but by the hearts of 2 women who had learned at last to trust. Ga. The night before the siege, King's Landing bristled with anticipation and dread, the tension hanging in the air as thick as the smoke that curled from the bakeries, the armories, and the makeshift pyres where the poor burned refuse for warmth. Every gate was barred, every alley crawling with informants and shadows, every tower lit by sentries peering anxiously across the water, searching for the telltale flicker of dragonfire on the horizon. In the Red Keep, the queens met with their council deep into the candlelit hours, the weight of the realm pressing down upon their shoulders. Jaime stood by the hearth, face hard, eyes haunted by the distant past. Randyll Tarly, always rigid, pressed for a sortie. Better to die fighting, he argued, than starve behind the walls. Olenna Tyrell spat her contempt for the man, but her sharp tongue could not sever the invisible noose tightening around the city. Cersei wore midnight velvet, her gold hair unbound, framing her face like a crown of fire. She presided at the table's head, her voice cold, but calm. Margaery sat at her right, quill in hand, notes neatly aligned. Their alliance, once so precarious, now felt as necessary as breath, as if the city itself depended on their shared will to survive. Yet Cersei knew the cost of trust, and Margaery understood the price of mercy. They were iron and silk, light and shadow, and together, for all their differences, they formed a blade. "The city cannot withstand 3 dragons," Randall said, his jaw clenched. "The walls will melt, our soldiers will break." Cersei's gaze was like a knife. "Yet the people will not forgive us if we do not try. They are ours to protect, not to offer as sacrifices to a foreign queen." Olenna made a sound of grudging approval, her cane tapping restlessly on the flagstones. "I would rather die with a sword in my hand than see my grandchild bow to a Targaryen." Margaery did not flinch. "It need not be surrender. Let us offer parley. If Daenerys is as merciful as her followers claim, she will listen. She fed her enemies to dragons in Slaver's Bay," Jaime reminded them quietly. "She rules by fire. She rules by spectacle," Margaery countered. "She wants to be loved as much as feared. If we can buy time, perhaps she will show restraint." Cersei's fingers drummed the table, her mind racing. She hated the thought of bending knee, even in words. But Margaery's logic was sound. If Daenerys believed the city was hers for the taking, perhaps her wrath could be tempered. "Very well," Cersei said. "Margaery, you and I will meet the Dragon Queen at dawn. But there will be no banners of truce. If she wishes parley, she must land outside the walls, before the eyes of the city." The council adjourned. Sleep was a stranger that night. Margaery sat by candlelight, writing letters she might never send. One to her grandmother, one to her brother, both full of courage she did not always feel. In the silence, she heard Cersei's footsteps outside, the restless pacing of a woman who had lost too much to yield easily. At dawn, the city awoke to a sky painted with fire and gold. 3 dragons wheeled above the black water, their wings vast shadows over the river, their cries sending flocks of gulls scattering. The people crowded the streets, pressing against the walls, silent in awe and terror. At the gate of the gods, the queens awaited, surrounded by a thin line of gold cloaks and knights. Margaery wore green and gold, her hair crowned with fresh roses. Cersei, in crimson and black, looked every inch the Lannister queen, unbowed even as death circled overhead. From the distant line of Dornish horsemen, Daenerys Targaryen emerged, silver-haired, young, but marked by hardship and battle. At her side marched the Unsullied, their spears bright beneath the morning sun. Ser Jorah Mormont rode with her, and behind them, Grey Worm, face unreadable, Daenerys dismounted. She walked alone across the churned earth, the dragons settling behind her, their eyes like coals, their breath steaming. The city held its breath. Margaery stepped forward first. She curtsied low. "Your Grace, I am Margaery of House Tyrell, Queen of the Andals and the First Men, by marriage and by right of council." Medine. Cersei did not kneel. She inclined her head, cold as winter. "Cersei of House Lannister, Queen Regent. You come to take what is not yours." Daenerys regarded them, her gaze as direct as sunlight. "I come to claim the Iron Throne, by blood and by fire. Bend the knee, and the city will be spared." Cersei's jaw tightened, but it was Margaery who answered. "Spare it for whom? The people, or your dragons? This city has buried enough children to fill the crypts of Valyria. We will not surrender them to the flames." Mason Hass. Daenerys studied her, something softening in her gaze. "I do not wish to be a butcher. Let me rule, and I will rebuild. Stand with me, not against me." Margaery glanced at Cersei, then back to the Dragon Queen. "What mercy can you promise?" "Mercy to those who do not resist," Daenerys replied. "Death to those who raise arms against me." Cersei spat, her pride flaring. "You will have neither our swords nor our loyalty. You would make us slaves. We are queens." Daenerys looked at them both, measuring, weighing. "Then your blood will water the stones." The moment hung, suspended by a thread. The dragons stirred, scenting battle. But Margaery's voice cut through the tension. If you burn the city, you will rule over ash. Your reign will be brief and bitter. Stand down for one day. Let the people see you not as a conqueror, but as a queen. Allow bread to be distributed. Let the bells ring for peace. If you do not, you will unite every house against you. A murmur rippled through Daenerys' entourage. Jorah leaned close, whispering. Daenerys considered, her eyes flicking between the two queens, then to the waiting masses on the walls. One day, she said at last, one day of peace. If the city yields, I will accept your surrender. If not, fire and blood. She turned, remounted, and with a gesture, her dragons rose, scattering cinders and wind. The armies retreated, leaving the city poised on a knife edge. Back within the walls, panic and hope waged their own war. Cersei stalked the council chamber, fury simmering. She will burn us all. We should strike first. Use the wildfire, burn the dragons in their nests. Memnom? En? Olenna shook her head, face like carved marble. If you do, you will kill more than dragons. You will kill the realm. Margaery laid a gentle hand on Cersei's arm, stilling her. Let us use her mercy, not her rage. Tonight, we feed the people. We open the septs, the granaries, the wells. Let them see who truly cares for them. Cersei recoiled, pride raw and bloody, but Margaery's calm prevailed. Bread and wine were handed out by the wagon load. The city's poor feasted for the first time in years. The bells tolled, not in warning, but in hope. The people began to believe. That night, Margaery walked the streets in disguise, her cloak pulled low, her guards trailing at a distance. She spoke with the merchants, the bakers, the beggars. She listened to their fears, their hopes. She saw the way the people loved their city, the way they feared losing it to war. Returning to the Red Keep, she found Cersei alone in the Queen's Tower, staring out across the darkened rooftops. You risk yourself, Cersei said not unkindly. If you fall, the city falls. Margaery sat beside her. I do what I must. If we are to survive, we must be seen as their hope, not as tyrants. For the first time, Cersei looked at Margaery not as a rival, but as something closer. A sister in arms, a reflection of her own will, shaped by different pain. What if Daenerys refuses? What if she burns us anyway? Then we stand together, Margaery answered. And we die as queens. At dawn, Daenerys returned. Her dragons roared overhead, but the city's bells rang louder. The gates were opened. The people poured into the squares, waving banners, shouting for peace. They called not just for Cersei or Margaery, but for the city itself. Their voices filled the air, drowning out even the thunder of dragon wings. On the steps of the Great Sept, the three queens met at last. Margaery knelt, offering the keys of the city. Cersei, her pride bleeding, bent her head but did not kneel. Daenerys, victorious but somber, accepted the surrender. I will rule with justice, Daenerys declared to the crowd. There will be no more war. But the city's peace was fragile, resting on the word of a conqueror, the grace of a vanquished lion, and the hope of a rose that refused to wilt. The small council was reformed, with seats for Tyrell and Lannister, for Martell and Tarly. Olenna Tyrell, fierce as ever, guided her granddaughter. Jaime Lannister swore an uneasy loyalty, his golden hand flashing beneath his cloak. Yet beneath the surface, new tensions grew. The North, unbowed, refused to send envoys. The Iron Islands whispered rebellion. In the dungeons, plots were hatched. In the brothels, songs were sung of three queens who held the city's fate in their hands. Cersei and Margaery moved through the court like dancers in a hall of knives, each word measured, each alliance weighed. Daenerys struggled to win the loyalty of the lords, her dragons a constant, uneasy threat. Some called for mercy, others for vengeance. The city waited, breath held, for the next spark. Late one evening, as thunder rolled beyond the city walls, Margaery found Cersei in the crypts beneath the Red Keep, gazing at the tomb of her father. "I gave her the city," Cersei said, her voice ragged, "but I will not give her my soul." Margaery knelt beside her, laying a rose atop the marble. "Then we must shape her reign. Together. She is not our enemy, not if we are wise." Cersei's eyes flickered with pain and pride. "I have lost too much." "So have I," Margaery replied softly. "But we have each other. And the realm." A silence stretched between them, full of things unsaid. In that moment, the queens made their truest pact. Not for power or for pride, but for the battered hope of a city that needed them both. Outside, rain swept the city clean, and for a little while, King's Landing breathed in peace, uncertain, but alive. As autumn settled like a faded cloak over King's Landing, the city struggled to adjust to peace that felt more like a lingering truce. Smoke curled from 1,000 hearths in the dusk, mixing with the scents of river mud and roasting chestnuts in the lower districts. The banners of dragon, lion, and rose fluttered together above the Red Keep, their uneasy alliance the only barrier between order and chaos. But beneath the city's battered stone, old wounds festered. Rumors grew, as wild as ivy, of northern wolves gathering in the shadows, of Ironborn plotting in the dusk, of fires yet to come. In the council chamber, Daenerys Targaryen presided, regal but tense. She wore a gown the color of storm clouds, her silver hair coiled in dragon's teeth, her expression both gracious and unyielding. Beside her, Margaery Tyrell had learned to mask her fear with poise, sitting with her back straight, a quill in her fingers, taking notes with gentle diligence. Cersei Lannister, still proud and gold and dangerous, sat at Daenerys' left. Her smile was sharp, her silences colder than any winter wind. Olenna Tyrell had carved herself a place at the table by sheer force of will and barbed tongue. Randyll Tarly, dour and dutiful, managed the city watch and the Reach garrisons. Tyrion Lannister had returned to the capital, wary and thinner than when had left, but bringing a sharp mind and a grudging loyalty to the Dragon Queen. The council debated every matter: shipments from the Reach, spies from Dorne, unrest in the Riverlands, whispers from the north. Jon Snow remained silent, Tyrion observed, rolling a wine cup between his fingers. No raven, no envoy. The North guards its silence like a miser guards his last gold dragon. Cersei's mouth twisted. Let him rot with his wolves and his pride. The North is broken, more than he cares to admit. Daenerys considered. We will need the North's loyalty, not its rebellion, when winter truly falls. I will send an invitation. He will come, or the people will see him for what he is, a king true proud for peace. Olenna tapped her cane, impatient. If the North marches, it will be for vengeance, not bread. Keep your eyes on the Greyjoys. The Iron Fleet grows bolder. Randyll nodded, jaw clenched. We lost 3 merchant ships last week, burned to the waterline. There's talk of rebellion on the Fingers and in Blackdyne. Daenerys looked to Margaery. You have the city's ear. What do the people want? Margaery's voice was calm. Certain. Food. Dye. Safety. The promise that dragons will not burn them in their beds. Many remember the sack of King's Landing and fear the old Targaryen madness. They will trust you, Your Grace, if you continue to rule by justice, not by fire. Then, Cersei said nothing, her eyes unreadable. In truth, she saw the wisdom in Margaery's words, though her pride bristled at the Tyrell girl's influence. That evening, Daenerys summoned Margaery to her solar, dismissing the guards with a gentle word. Margaery found the Targaryen queen standing by the window, looking out at the city as lanterns bloomed in the dusk. Does it feel like victory to you? Daenerys asked, her voice soft, uncertain. Margaery joined her, studying the streets below. It feels like the eye of a storm. We have bought peace, not won it. The people follow you, but only for now. Daenerys glanced at her, searching for deceit, but found only honesty. And what of Cersei? Will she always be my enemy? Margaery weighed her words carefully. No, not always. But she is like you, your grace. She will never surrender entirely, not in her heart. You must rule with her, not over her. If you can. Daenerys let out a weary breath. I wish I had your faith, Margaery. Margaery smiled, just a little. Faith is a weapon like any other, your grace. Sharper than steel, sometimes. Then, they stood in companionable silence as darkness fell. The uneasy bond between three queens, one born of fire, one of thorns, and one of pride, was the only hope for the realm's future. The following weeks saw change ripple through the city. Daenerys rode through the streets each day, attended by Unsullied and a scattering of Reach Knights. She listened to grievances, settled disputes, and dined with guilds and merchants. Margaery organized feasts for the orphans and arranged for Tyrell grain to be distributed to the poorest districts. Cersei, seldom seen but ever watchful, made her influence felt in more subtle ways, silencing the worst of the city's malcontents, brokering quiet alliances with the Gold Cloaks, and ensuring that none mistook her silence for surrender. The greatest threat, however, came not from within, but from the north. One crisp morning, a black-feathered raven arrived bearing the Stark sigil. Its message was brief, signed in Jon Snow's hand. He would come south. He would bring his bannermen and his word. Preparations for Jon's arrival took on a fevered urgency. The city's walls were scrubbed, the banners refreshed, the castle's gates thrown open in welcome. But anxiety coiled in every corridor. No one forgot the past, or the risk of bringing northern steel into the dragon's den. Margaery watched the queens with growing unease. Cersei became more brittle with every passing day. Her nights restless, her words laced with bitterness. Daenerys too grew sharper. Her dreams haunted by memories of fire and betrayal. Margaery herself was caught between them, balancing hope and dread, her own ambitions muted by the greater good. The day Jon Snow arrived dawned cold and bright. His banners streamed behind him, direwolf gray and white, as he rode through the city gates. His retinue was small but formidable. Sansa Stark, regal and wary. Arya, half shadow, half wild. Davos Seaworth, plain-spoken and loyal. The people of King's Landing, many of whom had never seen a Stark, gaped at the northern procession, their eyes wary but curious. In the throne room, the three queens stood together at the foot of the Iron Throne. Daenerys wore black and silver, her presence commanding. Cersei, flanked by Lannister guards, looked every inch the queen she had once been. Margaery, radiant in green and gold, stood between them, mediator and witness. Jon entered without fanfare, his stride steady, his cloak dusted with frost. He bowed his head, eyes never leaving Daenerys. "Your Grace," he said to Daenerys, then nodded to Cersei, and finally to Margaery. Daenerys descended from the dais to meet him as an equal. "Lord Stark, the realm is yours as much as mine. What terms do you bring?" Jon's voice was steady. "The North will not bend the knee. But we will not war with the South, not if the peace you promise is true. The North will keep its laws and lords. We ask for grain and fair trade, and for the right to defend ourselves if threatened." "Nadine?" Cersei's lips thinned. "And what of the Iron Throne?" Jon looked her in the eye. "The North wants no part of it. Let the South keep its crowns and courts." A tense silence followed. Tyrion broke it with a wry smile. "A kingdom for a quiet life. The wisest of us all, perhaps." Daenerys considered. "Very well. The North is free, so long as it keeps the peace and answers the call if the realm is in peril." "Then?" Cersei glared, but Margaery smiled. The pact was made. A great feast was held that night. The halls of the Red Keep alive with music and laughter for the first time in years. Old wounds were not healed, but for one night, hope flickered. Yet hope, in Westeros, is never without its shadows. It was Arya who uncovered the plot, silent as mist, She moved through the kitchens and corridors, listening to the whispers of servants and the plans of men who thought themselves clever. Someone, she learned, was planning to kill Daenerys. She found Margaery in the gardens, where roses bloomed wild even in the late season. "They mean to poison her," Arya said, blunt as a blade. "Not sure who, but it's a man with a Lannister ring. They're meeting tonight in the cellars." Margaery's heart raced. She thanked Arya, then hurried to the Queen's Tower. Cersei was there, drinking alone, her eyes red-rimmed. "There's a plot," Margaery whispered. "Someone means to kill Daenerys," Arya overheard. Cersei's mouth tightened. "If Daenerys dies, the city burns. Even I know that." "Who?" "Nenderwanda. Someone with your house's ring." Cersei stood, her face as hard as the wall. "Show me." Together, they crept through the keep, shadows slipping from one alcove to the next. In the dark cellar beneath the kitchens, they found him, Sir Bronn of the Blackwater, grinning as he examined a vial of green liquid. 2 lesser Lannister knights stood with him, arms folded, faces grim. Cersei stepped into the light, every inch the queen. "Put it down, Bronn." Bronn shrugged, unrepentant. "Orders, my queen. From your uncle, or what's left of him." Cersei's eyes were cold. "If you do this, there will be no Lannisters left in the realm. Only ashes." Bronn looked at her, weighing gold against survival. At last he tipped the vial to the stones, shattering it. The poison hissed harmlessly away. Margaery exhaled. Cersei nodded once, curt, then turned on the knights. "You will leave the city before sunrise. If you do not, you will be hanging from the walls by noon." Bronn smirked, slipped away. The knights followed, sullen and silent. When they were gone, Margaery turned to Cersei. "You saved her." Cersei's voice was low. "I saved us all. If Daenerys burns, so do we." "And no." The next morning, Margaery confessed the truth to Daenerys, leaving out no detail. The Dragon Queen's face was unreadable as she listened. "You risked your life to save mine." "Why?" "Because the realm needs you, not another war," Margaery said. Simple and true. Daenerys looked at her, understanding dawning. "We are more alike than I thought, you and I. And you, Cersei. We are 3 queens, but only one realm." That day, Daenerys announced her pardon of the Lannister knights. The city, at last, seemed to breathe again. Cersei and Margaery walked together through the Queen's gardens, the roses bright against the autumn sky. For the first time, the barriers between them seemed thin as gossamer. "We have survived worse," Cersei said, her tone almost teasing. Margaery smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. "We have. And perhaps together we can build something better." For a moment, under the sun and the gentle drift of golden leaves, the promise of peace seemed real. In the distance, the bells of the city chimed, not for warning but for hope. A song that, for once, all 3 queens could share. Ka. Winter's shadow crept steadily down from the north, drawing a cold hush even over the bright stones of King's Landing. The city had always thrived on the sharp clash of ambition and intrigue, but now something deeper pulsed beneath the surface. A wary optimism, a hope that had not lived here since Robert's rebellion. Yet peace, like winter, was always at risk of being shattered. Cersei's nights grew restless as the days shortened. Sometimes she prowled the long galleries, gliding silent as a specter through the keep's moonlit corridors. Once, a boy guard stumbled across her in the dark. She watched his eyes widen as he recognized her, as if he'd seen a ghost in a queen's skin. She almost laughed. She remembered the days when she would have banished such a child for his insolence. But the world had changed. Now she watched him scurry away, shivering, and wondered if he'd live long enough to see peace take root in the realm. Down in the kitchens, Margaery made her rounds in the mornings. She came with the grain wagons, and the city's poor soon learned to gather where she appeared. Children with hollow cheeks, mothers cradling infants, wounded soldiers too proud to beg. Margaery always found a way to listen to each one, never hurried, never hard, always with the same gentle certainty. The bakers and cooks loved her for her patience. Even the gruffest old beggars blessed her name. On a raw morning streaked with sleet, Daenerys called her queens and council to the Hall of Faces, a seldom-used chamber lined with the busts of Targaryen ancestors, everyone watching with eyeless, stony reproach. Jon Snow was present, his northern retinue camped outside the city, their uneasy alliance still holding. Tyrion stood beside Daenerys, reading the newest reports from the Riverlands. Arya watched from a shadow, unseen by most, but not by Cersei or Margaery. "The Iron Fleet is gathering off Fair Isle," Tyrion said, setting the parchment aside. "Yara Greyjoy's banners fly with them, but Euron's men are in the mix. The North has confirmed the Ironborn landed raiders in Deepwood Motte, likely testing for weakness." Jon nodded grimly. "We've sent riders to the coast, but the snows come early. If the Ironborn decide to press, our harbors are at risk." Rendell Tarley frowned. "We cannot strip men from the city. If the Iron Fleet sails up the Blackwater, there's nothing to stop them from setting the city ablaze." "We mustn't meet their chaos with our own," Daenerys said. Her voice was softer than command, but all the more persuasive for it. "The people are only just beginning to trust us. If we divide our forces, we risk losing both the North and the capital." Cersei watched Daenerys, her face unreadable. "Let the Ironborn have their little victories. They cannot hold what they take. They never could. If the North stands, let it stand. Our strength must remain here." Margaery added quietly, "If we panic now, the small folk will know it. Better to trust the North to Jon Snow's bannermen and keep the peace in the city. If Yara is truly on our side, she may blunt Euron's ambitions." And Daenerys looked to Jon, who nodded after a long-waited pause. "Winterfell will hold. We always have." So it was decided, and the council dispersed. As the room emptied, Cersei lingered, her eyes on the busts. Margaery approached her, pausing beside the stone head of King Maegor the Cruel. "You were right about Daenerys." Cersei said at last, voice nearly lost among the stone faces. "She is not as her father was. She is harder than I thought, but not unkind." Margaery's lips curled in a smile. "She has learned as we have. Kindness is a blade, but wielded wisely, it cuts through even the thickest armor." "Ben?" Cersei almost smiled back. "You are wasted on roses. In another life, you would have made a fine lioness." "In another life," Margaery agreed. "We might all have been something different." They left together, passing Arya in the shadows. The Stark girl's eyes lingered on them, a flicker of something like approval in her cool gaze. The weeks passed, marked by uneasy calm and cautious rebuilding. The city's wounds slowly began to heal. Broken walls were patched, market squares swept clean, orphanages filled with fresh straw and laughter. Sansa Stark, gracious but shrewd, remained in the city to oversee trade with the North. She and Margaery became frequent companions, their conversations private and earnest, planting seeds for a future neither could yet see. But in the heart of the city, beneath the White Sword Tower, Brienne of Tarth gathered the remnants of the Kingsguard. Under her steady hand, the royal household regained its dignity. No longer was the gold cloak feared for cruelty. Instead, the city's folk learned to trust the women and men who wore the white. One bitter night, as frost bit the air, a fire broke out in Flea Bottom, a shanty warehouse where grain had been hoarded by former Faith militant loyalists. The blaze spread fast, threatening the slums and the warehouses of the merchant guilds. Margaery, roused by cries in the street, did not hesitate. She donned a plain cloak, summoned her guards, and hurried to the scene. Cersei found her there amid the smoke, Margaery's gown torn and her hands blackened, dragging water buckets beside the city's poorest. Together, the two queens organized the bucket lines, directed the gold cloaks, and calmed the frightened mob. By dawn the fire was out, the damage less than feared, but not without cost. 5 dead, 3 children missing, and the food store reduced to ashes. That morning, the small folk gathered in the square before the Red Keep, demanding justice. Margaery faced them, her hair singed, her eyes red from smoke. "We have lost much, but we will rebuild," she called. "No one will go hungry. By royal decree, every loaf in the city will be shared. No one will hoard, no one will starve." Cersei, flanking her, raised her voice. "If you see another hoarder, bring them to the keep. There will be amnesty for those who confess, but no mercy for traitors." In the days that followed, bread was baked in the castle ovens and distributed to the city's poorest, Margaery and Cersei, overseeing the work. The council redirected grain from the Reach, and Jon sent wagons south from Winterfell, Sansa's seal marking the bales. The city began to believe in its queens. Peace, however, bred new dangers. In the Riverlands, unrest simmered as old houses fought for scraps left behind by the frays. At the court, ambitious men and women vied for Daenerys' favor, some angling for her hand in marriage, others whispering that 3 queens could not last. Olenna Tyrell, age weighing heavy on her bones, grew more distant, her letters full of subtle warnings. Then came news that shook the city. A rider arrived from the Vale, battered and wild-eyed. Lord Petyr Baelish was dead, slain by Sansa Stark's own order, his schemes laid bare for all to see. The Lord's declarant had reaffirmed their loyalty to the Starks. Sansa's star rose higher, and for the first time, Margaery glimpsed a future where the North and South were not only at peace, but bound by genuine trust. But the rumors did not stop. On the heels of the Vale Rider came another message, this one from the east. Dragons had been seen above Pentos. The old magics were not so easily tamed, it seemed. Some whispered that Daenerys' rule had awakened other powers. Distant kin, forgotten Targaryen bloodlines, hungry for a crown. Cersei took this news with a grim humor. "Let them come. We have faced worse and survived. The realm does not need more dragons, it needs more bakers." Margaery laughed, surprising herself. "Or perhaps more queens." Daenerys, for her part, sent ravens to Pentos, offering friendship or warning. Winter bit harder. The first true snows dusted the city, a marvel to southern children who had never seen such white. For a night, all enmity seemed forgotten, as even lords' sons threw snowballs in the yard, and the small folk made crude snow kings and queens. In the candlelit halls of the Red Keep, the 3 queens dined together, Jon and Sansa present, Tyrion and Arya sharing jests. It was the first time in memory the castle's great hall rang with laughter not sharpened by malice. Margaery looked around at those faces, the survivors, the broken, the hopeful. "It is possible then," she said softly, "to change the world. Even here." Daenerys raised her cup. "To peace that is forged, not given." Cersei raised hers as well, lips curving. "To those who will fight for it every day." Jon smiled. Sansa nodded, and Arya merely watched, her blade never far from reach. Outside, snow fell on King's Landing, softening the city's sharp edges, covering scars old and new. And in the warmth of the hall, for the first time in a generation, there was the sense that Westeros might truly be ruled not by fire, nor by fear, but by hope, and the steel of 3 queens who had learned, together, to trust in something greater than themselves. K. Ha. As the snows thickened, blanketing the red roofs and winding streets of King's Landing in a hush that seemed both holy and fragile, the city changed. For the first time in living memory, hunger and violence retreated before the slow daily labor of renewal. Masons rebuilt crumbled walls. Orphans, once scattered or pressed into begging, found warmth in Queen Margaery's kitchens and laughter in makeshift schools, staffed by septas and wise women. The merchants of the city, encouraged by Lady Sansa's northern trade and the Tyrell grain fleets, discovered new prosperity, though no gold could quite dispel the memory of war, or the wary vigilance that lingered in every heart. Peace had not come by chance. It was the product of 3 wills, Daenerys, Cersei, and Margaery, whose union was now the stuff of ballads sung in smoky taverns and great halls alike. But every alliance bore its cracks, and in the stillness of winter, these fissures sometimes seemed to widen, threatening all they had wrought. In the council chamber, news continued to swirl. From the stepstones, Word arrived of a Cersei king gathering pirates, harrying the narrow sea. The Ironborn raided the coast of the Reach, their banners torn between Yara's loyalty and Euron's dark ambitions. Dorne remained distant, its prince sullen and suspicious, while the Vale and Riverland struggled to quell old grudges. But most troubling were the whispers from the east. The letters came first, sealed with strange signs, bearing promises and threats. In Les, a Silver Prince claimed descent from the Dragon Lords of old, promising to return with fire and blood. In Volantis, priests of Rhaelor fanned the flames of prophecy, their eyes fixed on Westeros. Spies reported mercenary captains gathering on the shores of the narrow sea, ready to sell their swords to the highest bidder. One such letter found its way into Daenerys' hand late one evening. She sat alone by the hearth in her private solar, the fire's warmth not quite banishing the chill from her bones. The parchment was stiff, the words written in a slanted foreign hand. "You are not the only dragon left in the world. The flame still burns across the sea. Will you rule, or will you burn?" She stared at it for a long while before summoning her council. They gathered in the solar. Margaery in a cloak of green and gold, Cersei regal and unbending in crimson velvet, Sansa somber and composed, Tyrion with ink-stained hands, Arya silent as a shadow. Jon Snow, having returned from the north to consult, stood beside his sister, his sword at his hip. Tyrion read the letter aloud, then set it down. "The rumors are troubling, but not new. Westeros has always attracted pretenders. Most prove false, and the rest die quickly." Cersei's eyes narrowed. "Or not quickly enough. If this Silver Prince has gold and ships, he could rally the exiles and broken lords who hate us still." Margaery's voice was clear. "It is a test. They want to see how united we are. If we splinter now, if we turn on each other, their cause will grow." Jon spoke next, his voice grave. "If dragons fly again across the sea, the North will stand ready. But our strength is here, in the peace we forged." "And then?" Daenerys listened, feeling the weight of their words. She stood, letting the firelight catch the silver in her hair. "If they come, we will meet them together. But we will not let fear rule us. The realm is tired of war. Let our answer be strength and unity." Sansa met her gaze. "You have my word, and Winterfell's." Cersei inclined her head, a rare concession. "And mine, for as long as the city stands." Margaery smiled, her hope undimmed. "Then let us show them what 3 queens can do." Winter pressed on. The snows in the north grew deeper, but the roads to King's Landing remained open, thanks to the tireless efforts of Jon's men and the stubborn will of the small folk. The city's markets grew crowded with produce and wares from across the realm. Northern furs, Dornish spices, golden apples from the arbor. The people, once too poor or fearful to linger, now bartered and laughed beneath the banners of dragon, lion, and rose. The Red Keep bustled with activity. Sansa's court became a hub for the great houses, where grievances were aired and feasts held. Arya, ever restless, patrolled the city's shadows, rooting out the last vestiges of the faith militant and the spies of foreign princes. Margaery's presence at the orphanages and hospitals became legend. More than once, she intervened in street quarrels herself, earning the love, and sometimes the grudging respect, of the city's hardened dwellers. Daenerys, for her part, sought out the city's maesters and scholars. She ordered the libraries expanded, the old tomes from the Citadel copied and sent north. She listened to the dreams of the city's children, and on rare occasions, let herself be seen walking among them, guarded only by Grey Worm and a handful of Unsullied. Cersei, always a presence of cold authority, busied herself with the gold cloaks and the city's courts. She punished corruption with a merciless hand, but also established a fund for widows and orphans, winning the wary admiration of even her old enemies. She watched Margaery and Daenerys closely, wary of their friendship, but never once broke the public unity that kept the city strong. At night, the 3 queens sometimes dined together, their conversations ranging from the grave to the absurd. One evening, snow fell so thickly that the city was muffled and still. They sat before a roaring fire in Cersei's solar, sipping mulled wine. Margaery, ever the peacemaker, broached a dangerous subject. If the Silver Prince lands, what will we do? The people will fear another war. Many will be tempted to join him, if only for the promise of change. Cersei's voice was low. We kill him. We kill any who follow him. There is no room for sentiment. Daenerys watched the fire. Perhaps we offer him a chance to kneel. If he refuses, then he dies. Margaery shook her head. We must offer more than threats. If we rule only by fear, we are no better than those we overthrew. Daenerys met her gaze. And if mercy is weakness, it is not, Margaery said quietly. Mercy is strength, if it is seen to be just. Cersei drank, a rare smile touching her lips. You are as naive as you are stubborn, Margaery Tyrell, but you may be right. The first challenge came not from across the sea, but from within. A conspiracy, rooted in the slums of Flea Bottom and the anger of minor lords displaced by the wars, sought to seize the city in the dead of night. They poisoned a well, hoping to sow chaos. They paid gold cloaks to open the mud gate at dawn. Arya uncovered the plot, her dagger flashing in the shadows. The conspirators were caught, some executed, some sent to the wall, some pardoned at Margaery's urging and set to rebuilding what they had sought to destroy. The city saw this and remembered. Mercy for the honest, no quarter for the traitor. The lesson was not lost on those who might have turned to the Silver Prince. When the first ships did arrive from Essos, they found the city's walls manned, the harbor bristling with scorpions, the banners of the queens flying high. Sail sails disembarked and were met by a delegation of merchants and city leaders, not soldiers. The Silver Prince's envoy, a gaunt man with violet eyes, was brought before the council. He looked at Daenerys and bowed. My prince claims the blood of old Valyria. He seeks only what is his by right. Daenerys' reply was measured, calm. If your prince wishes peace, let him come as a guest. If he comes with sword in hand, he will find only death. The envoy hesitated. He will come. And so he did. A month later, as the first crocuses pressed through the snow, the Silver Prince's fleet appeared on the horizon. But it was smaller than the rumors had promised, battered, half deserted. He came ashore in the clothes of a prince, but with the eyes of a man who had known too many losses. The city watched with bated breath as he climbed the steps to the Red Keep, unarmed, alone. Daenerys received him in the throne room, flanked by Margaery, Cersei, Sansa, and their council. He knelt. I come not to claim but to ask. The world beyond the sea is broken. My followers seek a home. I will swear fealty if you grant my people refuge. There was a silence. Then Daenerys stood. You will kneel, and your people will obey the laws of this land. If you do, you may stay. Margaery's eyes shone with relief. Even Cersei, wary, could not help but admire the simplicity of the act. The city accepted its new guests with caution, but not with violence. The Silver Prince, stripped of all but his dignity, settled with his followers on the Blackwater's banks, where the ruins of war had left space for new beginnings. Spring came late, but when it did, the city burst into life. The banners of dragon, lion, and rose still flew together. The people remembered the long winter, the hunger, and fear. But they also remembered the bread, the justice, the moments of laughter. On the anniversary of their alliance, the three queens rode through the city gates together. Daenerys on a pale mare, Cersei on a proud destrier, Margaery amidst a shower of rose petals. The bells of the great sept rang, not in warning, but in celebration. And that night, in the candlelit halls of the Red Keep, the city feasted as never before. Cersei, her hair silvered at the temples, stood beside Daenerys and Margaery on the dais. Her voice, always commanding, was softer than before. Once we were enemies, but the city is greater than any one of us. Let us be remembered not for our wars, but for the peace we forged. Menachai. Daenerys smiled, raising her cup. For Westeros, united at last. Margaery's laughter rang out, bright and clear. For the future, and for hope. As the revels continued, and the city's lights shone into the night, there was, for a time, a feeling that winter had truly ended, and that the spring which followed might finally endure. Bye. Summer's warmth returned to King's Landing in fits and starts, first coaxing color from the palace gardens, then ripening fruit in the markets, then finally, after the longest and most patient thaw in memory, softening even the oldest scars left by war. What began as uneasy truce had flowered, by work and will and no small share of luck, into something even the singers dared not name. The city was changing. Those who lived through the Red Keep's shadows now found the sun on their faces, hope flickering brighter with each passing day. But peace was not a spell to be cast once and then forgotten. It was 1,000 daily bargains, 100 compromises that left the three queens weary and vigilant. Their council chamber, once a battleground of pride, now bustled with honest debate, if not always harmony. Some days saw laughter echo in the vaults. Some days saw the steel in their voices clatter sharper than swords. Early in that first golden summer, Queen Daenerys called for a great gathering of the realm's lords and banners. They would meet not for war, but to forge a new future, one built on the hard-won lesson that no throne could stand long without the faith of its people. Invitations flew as fast as ravens could bear them, north to Winterfell, west to Casterly Rock, east to the Vale, south to Sunspear, and across the water to the new Valyrian settlement on the Black Water's edge. Preparations consumed the city. Margaery walked the orphanages and grain houses, ensuring no child would go hungry while the lords feasted. Cersei, flanked by Brienne and a company of gold cloaks, oversaw security herself. She paid visits to the city's guilds and smiths, reminding them that the prosperity of peace depended on their loyalty as much as the knights. Daenerys, her dragons rarely seen but always felt in the city's hush, worked with Tyrion and Sansa to shape the agenda, a council where lords and small folk alike could be heard. The lords arrived in a procession of colors. Jon Snow rode from the north with a retinue of Stark and Mormont bannermen, Sansa and Arya at his side. The Lords Declarant of the Vale followed, proud and distant, but respectful. Yara Greyjoy led a delegation from the Iron Islands, her face set and her voice sharp in every debate. Dorne's new prince came with a retinue of olive-skinned warriors and wise women in orange and gold. The Reach and the Riverlands, though battered by years of conflict, sent their best and brightest, banners streaming and voices eager for reconciliation. The gathering began in the Hall of 100 Hearths, the city's new heart for council and festival. The lords met the people in debate, fielding complaints and visions. Some old rivalries flared. Lord Grafton of Gulltown and Lady Mormont nearly came to blows over river trade, but at Margaery's urging, disputes were settled by arbitration, not steel. Tyrion's wit, Sansa's careful diplomacy, and even Arya's fierce, silent presence calmed tempers where coin or custom failed. At the heart of these negotiations were the three queens. Daenerys presided with the quiet gravity of one who had flown above cities, burned and rebuilt. Margaery, tireless and cheerful, wove connections between old enemies and new friends. Cersei, never softer than stone but far cleverer than most, used her knowledge of the city's veins to keep the peace and curb the ambitions of those who still dreamed of crowns. On the third day, as the city's bells tolled for noon, a delegation of smallfolk was admitted to the hall. A baker, a healer, a one-armed veteran, a washerwoman. They brought concerns about taxes and justice, about bread and healing. To the shock of many, Daenerys left her seat and stood among them, asking for their stories, promising redress and reform. Cersei listened, her gaze hard but calculating, while Margaery spoke in soft, earnest tones, promising new orphanages, leniency for honest debtors, and a hospital in the city's poorest ward. It was not mere show. In the weeks that followed, new laws were drafted, grain levies to keep the poor fed in winter, restrictions on forced labor, the right for small folk to petition the court directly. Sansa oversaw the courts, Arya hunted corruption among the city watch, and Brienne trained a new order of knights sworn not to lords, but to the realm itself. Amid all this, the Silver Prince of the Valyrian settlement watched quietly, guiding his followers to honest work and humble lives. Some lords grumbled, but Daenerys insisted. No vengeance for exiles who kept the peace. A few tried to foment trouble. They found themselves swiftly judged, and if not exiled, put to work on the city's walls. The city's festivals bloomed that summer like never before. The first day of the new moon brought games and competitions in the dragon pit, restored at last to a place of gathering, not death. Merchants from Lys and Old Town hawked spices and silk. Jugglers tossed torches in the twilight, while the city's children ran wild. And for a brief hour, even the wounds of the past seemed forgotten. On the night of the summer solstice, the three queens sat together on a balcony overlooking the Blackwater. The moon cast silver across the river. They drank sweet arbor wine and shared a rare moment of candor. "I used to dream only of victory," Daenerys admitted, her tone quiet. "But victory is just another beginning." Cersei's laugh was a short, knowing sound. "I once believed fear was enough. But fear breeds enemies, and enemies breed war." Margaery raised her cup, smiling at both. "I have always believed in the power of hope. But hope alone cannot feed a city or keep a crown. We three have learned much, and paid dearly for it," Cersei said. For a moment, silence hung between them, thick with memory. Of lost children, burned cities, sisters and mothers gone to war. Daenerys' voice was gentle. "We are not alone now. Whatever comes, we will meet it together." Below them, the city shimmered in the light of 1,000 lanterns. Songs floated up from the harbor. Bells rang not in warning, but in joy. But in Westeros, no summer ever lasts forever. As the lords departed, word spread of wildlings massing at the wall, of ships lost in the shivering sea, of shadows returning to the ruins of Harrenhal. Sansa grew troubled by letters from the north. Some mysterious fever striking the free folk, direwolves sighted on the borders of the Gift. Margaery listened to rumors of a new bandit king in the Riverlands, gathering the desperate and dispossessed. Daenerys received a raven from the east. The priests of Urlor called for a reckoning, their flames burning higher, their prophecies turning toward the west. The queens met often, council growing graver with each news. Yet they faced the future with the same stubborn courage that had delivered them from war. Arya rode north, silent as wind, to scout the wall herself. Jon Snow and Sansa worked to contain the fever, sending maesters and stores of grain. The city, armed with its newfound peace and purpose, began to train more healers and warriors, not for conquest, but for defense. One gray dawn, a message arrived from the Citadel. The fever in the north had abated, thanks to the Queen's healers. The wildlings returned to their own lands, leaving behind gifts of furs and meat for the northern villages. Arya returned, but smiling, bearing word of a pack of direwolves seen watching over the wild folk, harming none. Margaery's new hospital treated the last of the bandit king's wounded, while the man himself, once a knight of the Riverlands, embittered by loss, was persuaded by Brienne and Sansa to lay down arms in exchange for pardon and honest work. The city, shaken but not broken, greeted each sunrise with more confidence. The peace that once seemed so fragile now felt, if not permanent, at least hard to shatter. On the first harvest, the city gathered for a festival on the banks of the Blackwater. Queen Daenerys led the parade through streets carpeted with petals. Cersei, in a rare moment of contentment, toasted the city's healers and builders, thanking even her old foes. Margaery danced with orphans and lords alike, her laughter rising like a bell. That evening, as lanterns floated downriver, the three queens met once more on the palace balcony. They stood together, not as rivals, but as the heart of a city that now dared to dream. "We have built something new," Daenerys whispered. Margaery nodded. "Let it last." Cersei, her eyes bright with a strange peace, answered, "Let them remember us for this." And so, as the river flowed to the sea and the stars wheeled above, hope endured, a hope hard-won and dearly kept, guarded by the three queens who had dared against all odds to rule together.